Hello again, everybody. My name is Josh Rhodes, and this is the Retro Monster Truck Review. This week we conclude our Gravedigger Month coverage. We extended it 1 week because, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to get one of the episodes out this week. Also, I want to say apology to our iTunes listeners. For some reason, last week's episode did not get uploaded onto iTunes. We switched from Anchor. We switched from Libsyn to Anchor about a month ago as far as our hosting platform goes, and we have not had an issue at all with Anchor up until now. For some reason, it did not post episode 48. I'm trying to figure out the issue. I've been in contact with iTunes on it, and as soon as we get an update on it, I'll let you guys know on our Facebook page over at the Retro Monster Truck Review on Facebook if you'd like to give us a follow over there. As always, though, we do want to thank you guys for your support on all those platforms, whether it be Spotify, iTunes, any other podcasting platform, as well as YouTube. Thank you all so much for the subscriptions and the comments over there. Keep them coming, guys. We want to keep growing that channel. For me this week, you're going to see me in Tampa, Florida at Raymond James Stadium for Monster Jam. But for this week's show, we've gone all the way back to Monster Wars again, 1993, Louisville Motor Speedway. I think y'all are really going to enjoy this one to end Gravedigger Month on. Y'all don't want to hear me blab anymore, though. Y'all want to get to the action, right? So we're going to take it right in with Matt Stoltz and myself from a couple of weeks back when we recorded this to bring you Louisville 1993 here on the Retro Monster Truck Review.
Structure set with a thumbs up. It's showtime!
He gets into it. It's just bad.
Wild. Awesome.
He's cool. He's tough.
He's nuts.
Because we just like him. He's got a swamp in it.
Anything for the crowd to scream.
Houston! Grave Diggers in the house! Taurus and Grave Digger! Grave Digger and Taurus, even Digger pulls it out! Oh yeah! He races on to the next round. Grave Digger out doing what he likes to do.
Like some high-flying, high-speed, full-throttle car crushing.
Grave Digger with a successful by run and a half-pin turn. Here, ladies and gentlemen, Dennis Anderson and the winner, Grave Digger.
The fans are the ones that drive me. You know, when you hear them cheering for you, and I just set this driving style way back when I first started, and it's a reputation I built, and I got to live up to it.
Well, Matt, we're back here again for another show, and it seems like we always try to find Louisville at some point on these episodes, and we just kind of always circle back to the figure eight racing track. And here we are back in 1993. This is June 5th, 1993, Louisville Motor Speedway. We're here for a Monster Wars episode, the Grand Slam Monster Jam at Louisville Motor Speedway.
What's interesting is they use that Grand Slam Monster Jam name later on, usually for events that had 4 attractions. Usually it'd be like your monster trucks, you'd have maybe sand drags, quad wars, and then like a stunt or, you know, some other kind of feature act. Well, here it's the monster trucks and then just late model stock cars running on this night. So on the oval track. So they haven't really dialed this name in yet for the 4 different attractions, but that's what they called it. That's what the newspaper ad said was the Grand Slam Monster Jam at the Louisville Motor Speedway. And like you said, June 5th, 1993, we're mid-season in terms of recording here for Monster Wars. This is episode number 5 of the series. The first show of Louisville we get to see in the series, but it's actually the second show of the weekend.
Yep, that's exactly right. Like I said, episode 5 of the series. And the big story here is, well, there's a few big stories here in this show, but probably the biggest that they're going to push throughout the night is the rookie, Paul Schaefer, behind the wheel of Monster Patrol here. That's probably the one that's going to get pushed the entire show. But our track here is just, we kind of go into this Goodyear track facts section here. This is actually something you pointed out to me. This is the final track facts that is sponsored by Goodyear on Monster Wars. The rest of the season, it's just track facts segment, basically. Now, this is, like I said, the last one for Goodyear sponsoring it. From here on out, the show would just open with the Ultra Egos in a scene as well in this show. Joe Lowe is doing our intro right here. Now, your Ultra Egos after this show will be opening our Monster Wars events. Oh, joy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they produced these shows in batches and these were like the first 5 that they pumped out, or what the situation was. But after this, we see a bit of a difference in the production. Like you said, the cold opens are done, instead of by Joe Lowe, they're done by the Monster Wars characters, the alter egos of the monster trucks on the USHRA Super Series. And then the Goodyear track facts, like you mentioned, this is the last time we see Goodyear mentioned. And I'm not sure if they had a sponsorship deal for the show, because they had sponsor banners at a lot of the US Hot Rod events in 93. Maybe they saw the show being produced and they said, we don't like being associated with that or something. Who knows? But Goodyear involved on the live event aspect, and at least for the first few episodes here. And we start off again with that Joe Lowe cold open and then the rockin' saxophone hot sax soundtrack.
Yeah, you gotta love the Monster Wars. Love the guitar solo. Kind of reminds me of just, I don't know, it sounds like Slash playing, but it's obviously not. But it's still, love the guitar solo for the Monster Wars intro. Like I said, might be one of the only things that I really enjoyed from Monster Wars was that guitar and cold open that they would do. Our track here is the Louisville Figure 8. It's obviously the famous Louisville Figure 8. In terms of television, though, they hadn't televised a Louisville event. I believe it was 91 they didn't televise Louisville.
Correct. So
In
91,
92 they televised it, but I don't remember anything gigantically special about it other than something we talked about on a previous show, which was Dennis sliding sideways and unfortunately getting injured on that show.
yeah, well, 92 was interesting because it was kind of an amalgamation of a bunch of different lineups that they put together. It was a lot of up and comers combined with a few of the real top guys, and we had Barely Tame winning the Saturday night show and then Rambo winning the Sunday afternoon show. 2 very unexpected winners given the field there, with Equalizer, Carolina Crusher, Gravedigger. The 4-Link Predator was at that show. So interesting to see the breakout star Charlie Pauken on those nights as well, putting the hammer down and getting the job done for the most part, but coming up just a little bit short both events. So 91 we skip on television. Of course, 1990, the legendary weekend on Tough Tracks.
Oh yeah.
Now, 91 they put 2 lines of cars in the infield instead of the big pad, where you kind of had to jump over a gap in the cars one direction. And Tad Goad has those events up on his YouTube channel that he filmed from the stands. So if you want to take a look at those, you can check them out. Really, really good racing. 92, the car pad returns. A little bit smaller than years past, but it returns. And then for 93, big change in the track, not only in the track facility, but the way that we're running the monster truck track as well. They've paved some portions of the infield. They are also changing the direction that we run the track for the monster trucks compared to previous years. They used to start the trucks kind of leading on the front stretch back into turn 4 with a right-hand turn. Now we're going to start the trucks facing the back stretch, taking off towards turn 3 and kind of coming around that first corner backwards and then going back around the other direction around the track. So the other big change is that we've now, instead of got the pad of cars in the middle, there's just a single row of 3 cars widthwise across the track. Single car jump for these trucks landing on that hard asphalt. I'm not sure what drove the decision to do this. It's anybody's guess, but it sure made for an interesting weekend here on the Monster Wars broadcast with that big jump, a lot of air underneath the trucks and nothing to land on but the hard asphalt.
Yeah, and I can tell you one thing, and probably the main reason why the car pad kind of disappeared was probably the cost of all those cars. I mean, look at how many cars were in those car pads years before, and then you get to this, and there's, like you said, there's 6 cars on the track. Honestly, I believe cost was a major portion of that going into this particular weekend and this particular event. And to be truthful, with the way that these trucks are jumping and landing now, I think the drivers probably favor this style of course over what we had 2-3 years prior. Louisville right here, though, I think that the popularity of this particular event has started to trickle down a little bit. As far as from 1990 to 1991 and then 92 and now 1993, you had that awesome weekend in 1990. and then everything after that had to try and follow that up, and it doesn't seem like it's doing that.
I disagree, because from a fan aspect, they've packed the place for a number of years now. And 93, we actually moved to now having 3 shows instead of 2. So the demand had to have been there still for them to warrant going with a Saturday night show, or excuse me, a Saturday afternoon show that they added in, then the Saturday night show followed by the Sunday matinee. So they added the 3rd show to the weekend. And what's interesting here is that each of the shows was different. In terms of what the fans got to see live. Saturday afternoon was just monster trucks. They started the trucks right on the front stretch, and the track was not completely even because they had an offset start, and it's the 2nd episode we see in the Monster Wars season from Louisville, where they use a Christmas tree and timing lights, where they're just doing a monster truck only show. Saturday night, they moved the starting for the monster trucks to the X in the center of the track, and we've got late models as your other featured attraction doing the oval track racing. Sunday afternoon, they ran like 3 different divisions of oval track racing with the monster trucks. So a much varied experience for the fans that may have went to one show or another. I'm not sure if ticket prices were any different. I'd sure hate to have gone to the first show and paid the same amount to see a third of the amount of entertainment as the people on Sunday, but maybe that's how things worked back in the 90s. They had what they had, and that's what they rolled with. So an interesting aspect, again, the 3rd show added for 93. And another thing that's interesting is they had a truck extra for this show. So they had 11 trucks on hand, and they would only run 10 trucks in each show. And it's good because one of them fell out of our lineup from the first show. Josh, who do we've got at this 2nd show in Louisville?
Well, our lineup for this 2nd show here is Predator and Alan Pizzo, First Blood with Rob Fuchs, Digger number 7 with Dennis Anderson behind the wheel, Gravedigger, obviously your favorite probably in this particular series, Carolina Crusher number 3 with Gary Porter behind the wheel, Kodiak, Mark Bendler, maybe your other favorite in this lineup, Jackie Woman Jr. and Taurus number 5, Monster Patrol, your rookie Paul Schaefer, Barefoot, I'm going to say that's probably a big headlining favorite right there as well, with Fred Schaefer behind the wheel. Invader with Bray Perkowski, who's been coming on strong. And Tropical Thunder with Wayne Smozanik. Why Tropical Thunder? Well, you mentioned just a moment ago that there were 11 trucks on hand. Equalizer blew an engine the night before in the afternoon show and would be replaced by Tropical Thunder here.
Yeah, and Tropical Thunder and Equalizer would both be on that Sunday show, and Monster Patrol would sit out for the 3rd show on Sunday, which was the last show that aired toward the end of the Monster Wars season. So a little bit of mixing and matching of the lineups here for each of these shows, and I'm not sure what warranted the switch for Sunday for Paul not being able to run, but maybe he broke something during this event. We'll have to keep an eye out, see what kind of damage is incurred, but Tropical Thunder back in the lineup again for Sunday.
We're going to open the show here with Joe Lowe saying, "We've entered another dimension," and then that theme song hits, and we're in on Monster Wars. And, of course, Luann Lee, by the way, always Google her. We always want to see her, introduces the show, and this week's episode is going to take place, obviously, in Louisville. She makes some good puns right here, saying if the Kentucky Derby is exciting, check out this horsepower from the United States Hot Rod Association. I kind of like that, honestly. I mean, if you're going to talk about being in Kentucky, there's nothing better to compare to than the Kentucky Derby.
It's good writing by the script team for sure. And Luann, as we always talk about here, very professional introduction here on the Monster Wars broadcast. A bit more covered up compared to some of the other early season episodes. She's wearing a suit jacket here with the hair done up and some gold necklaces. So she says then to get ready for this. And we go into a music video which is featuring the Get Ready for This by 2 Unlimited that's used in so many sporting events to pump people up. And they've got the music video here. I mentioned we're watching the show that's here on my channel, Turn of the Century Motorsports, which is the original syndication version of Monster Wars that contained these music videos. The Speed Vision re-airs did not have this. They cut all that out because of the licensed music. So we're getting the full experience here with Monster Wars, and I really love these music videos.
Yeah, I love these music videos too. And like you said, this song has been used for countless years now to pump people up inside of a crowd. I've heard this used at Super Bowls. I've heard this used at monster truck events. I've heard this used at hockey events. You name the sport, whether it's got 4 wheels or you're running on 2 legs or you run with a stick and ball, it's been used. And now we've got it here on television promoting and helping monster trucks. You see some qualifying footage that was previously unaired from Pueblo and New Orleans mixed in among with other footage from 91 through 93 of these trucks. Luann then takes us and has to take a look at the crazy action from the week before in Jacksonville. And we see this Carolina Crusher Gravedigger race, which we'll eventually get to this Jacksonville show here on our Retro Monster Truck Review. But Carolina Crusher, Gravedigger, they tied in the first round, and neither truck made it to the finals. Barefoot would eventually take the win over Equalizer, and she tosses the show down to Jim Davidson. Want to touch real quick on this tie race that we see right here. I'm sure we're going to get into an argument on this, but to me it looks like Gary Porter really wins the race, but when they stop the tape, they're dead even there at the line.
It's a close race for sure. They say the closest race ever on Monster Wars, the first tie that they've ever had. I'm watching it live here. Boy, it's hard for me to say. I'm almost going to argue that it looks like the Gravedigger's ahead at the finish line based on where the tires are. So we can maybe debate that when we go to cover that episode. But on the time clocks, the way they officially did it, they called it a tie. And then they, I think Gravedigger red lit on the rematch. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that in future episodes.
Yeah, Porter went on to actually beat Dennis in the rematch, as they would say here. Jim is out there where really X marks the spot. He's in the center of the track, and it looks like that's probably where you're going to be landing as well. Keep your eye on the X for some extra excitement.
Oh, again, some great writing.
Oh,
here.
That's fantastic writing.
And Jim Davidson, one of the most underrated pit reporters we've discussed here on the Retro Monster Truck Review. His first acting gig, doing a great job as a pit reporter for Monster Wars, getting the point across, kind of setting the stage for one of the storylines here on this figure 8 track. We're starting at the X, and this is where the point of excitement's going to be.
He's not lying. That X is definitely going to be what marks the spot here as Joe Lowe begins to talk over our pre-race here. A shot of some of the trucks here lined up on the front stretch as well. I love the way they did intros on these speedways where they park the trucks nose to nose out here on the front stretch. Joe is going to then cover our point standings coming in. Bit of a shock here. Equalizer, your points leader going into this race at 147. Unfortunately, not able to compete tonight, so we know we're going to have a different points leader by the time this event ends. Barefoot sitting at 142 in second place, and right behind him is Dennis Anderson's Gravedigger at 135.
Yeah, Joe says that Digger's been doing a lot of turning over, sitting in third, but really the only role we've had to this point in the season was in show number 1 in West Leb, and Dennis came back to win that race, so the role was not to his detriment. Taurus showing 4th, Predator 5th, Invader 6th, Crusher all the way down in 7th place in the points so far. Kodiak 8th, Tropical Thunder 9th, First Blood in 10th. Now, these points, again, I've not been able to determine if they were the actual points that were used for the series, because some of the events, as we'll get into here, didn't have qualifying and they awarded points on that basis. So they're keeping track as if these are the real points per episode and they're being distributed accordingly. And then before we get to the final race of the season, they say, well, we had a bunch of untelevised events and we've updated the points and here's where we're at. It kind of threw a wrench into the whole point of keeping track of all this stuff. But at least in the moment, in 1994 and 95, as we're watching this on television, it gives us something to follow along with and keep track of.
Yeah, and it's something that they can go back to and kind of fill some time and some episodes with. There's no qualifying for this event, as you said, evidenced by the lack of times, and there are just points awarded randomly for the sake of the television show. Round 1 is going to start off here with First Blood and Carolina Crusher. First Blood, quote-unquote, qualifies 3rd, and Carolina Crusher's down in 8th. I would assume this was done just with a blind draw here for round number 1 competition. Angry First Blood, as opposed to Comical First Blood later in the season, cuts a promo basically in which he uses the phrase, "I will penetrate." Great for children.
There was a little more context to it, but yeah, that's what I have in my notes. And an interesting set of promos here. We don't touch on a whole lot of them here on the Retro Monster Truck Review from Monster Wars because we know that it will make our listeners and viewers very upset for some reason.
Oh, the host too.
And one of our hosts. So the thing I found interesting was a really good line by First Blood here. Prepare to scream for mercy when I reach down your throat and tear your guts out through the top of your fat, bald head. The delivery's off a little bit, but that's a pristine insult, my friend.
I don't know. I still think that's just the ultimate warrior right there, just draped out and dressed as First Blood. It's just the physique is very similar, the hair is very similar, the scream is very similar as well. But anyway, Carolina Crusher, First Blood.
The juiced up biceps aren't that dissimilar either.
Yeah, it's also a very good point. I'm pretty sure that basically what we're trying to say here is Jim Hellwig was getting 2 paychecks, one from the WWF and one from the United States Hot Rod Association.
We've got this interesting dichotomy, and this show would never work today because basically all these characters do is bully each other on a children's show. Carolina Crusher gets made fun of for being fat an awful lot throughout this series, and that was not going to fly in 2021.
No, definitely not. The trucks leave together here. Crusher is able to maintain alongside First Blood for the majority of the first turn. And Matt, in past Louisville races, we would see this first part of the track. They'd be pretty even with each other. But if the guy on the outside lane in the first pass was even with the guy on the inside, that generally meant that once that guy that's on the outside gets to his inside track, he was just going to pull away and steal the win away right here. But it seems like the way that they're running the course right here, that these trucks are a lot closer than they had been in years past. This is a really good first round race right here between these trucks. Like we said, they leave together, and by the end of the race, Carolina Crusher goes on to easily take the win on the inside lane, holds on for a 2 truck length victory, where in years past, Porter would be driving out through the tunnel as the other truck was finishing.
Yeah, the way that they set the turns up with the cones, I think, might have helped a little bit with that. If you look on the corner exits, and we'll keep an eye on this throughout the rest of the episode, I may not mention it, but viewers at home, listeners, if you're watching along with us here on the TV broadcast, look at how they exit the corners. They really tightened up the corner exits, the way that they set the cones, so that the guy on the inside track almost had to slow down to get out of the corner. And I think that kind of makes a big difference from the years past to what we see now, where instead of having to just kind of line up as best as you could on the track, now you've got better defined boundaries, and you're really having to slow down to come out of those corners. Again, they've done a lot of infield work here for 1993 in Louisville, and the track is a little bit different in a lot of aspects that really affects the way that you have to navigate with a monster truck.
Like we said, 2 truck length victory here for Gary Porter. He's going to clock in at a 32:40 on the time clock around the track. Gary said Rob had lane choice, but he was able to pull it off. Another interesting thing here, Rob has the lane choice over Gary. It astonishes me that he doesn't want the inside line coming to the cars for the finish.
Well, at this point, I guess there had kind of been a 50-50 split, and maybe I'm not correct in saying that, but a lot of times you'd still have the guy on the outside track in the second half win if he had a really good run. This time, again, like you said, the difference isn't as big as years past, but Fuchs gave up too much in the first half of this race. I don't believe he'd ever been on the figure 8 track yet, so maybe there was just some inexperience there in thinking he could have hung with Crusher in the second half of the race.
Yeah, that could have very well been right there. Outside line could work if you had the big horsepower to pull it off, just not enough here for Rob Fuchs. As we move on to the Gravedigger and the Invader, 2 of the characters that I actually didn't really mind all that much on Monster Wars. Digger cuts a promo, and then we head to commercial, and as we come back, on the other side of the break, we go to the Goodyear Track Facts with the telestrator taking us around the track, and we get these blurred out versions of the trucks. And if you've got a keen eye, you know exactly which trucks those are, even if their names are blurred out right here.
I like this Track Facts segment. I think that they're cool, and I like the way that they kind of show how the track works, especially on a track as long as this figure 8. And we talked in a previous Monster Wars episode about how they blurred the names of the trucks out, and you could still, really tell what they were. I mean, I was 4 years old watching this, and I knew that that was Carolina Crusher and Barefoot in the middle of the corner. But we see it. They kind of give it a little bit of a stylization to show the track here, and then we head back onto the track for Gravedigger versus Invader.
And looking at Gravedigger, there is something very obvious that is different on this Digger number 7 truck here, and that is the tires. 66x43 Firestone tires on Anderson's Gravedigger right here. You'd normally see this truck wearing Goodyears, but for some reason here at this event, Dennis wanted some Firestones. And if you look back at Dennis's history here on this track, the big wide Firestones he used to have on number 2 seemed to be what worked the best for him. And like we said, the year before, Dennis slides into the wall. He gets injured again. He is out for a number of months after that injury. doesn't want to slide into the wall again. Perhaps he's looking for more traction, and the Firestones seem to provide that here on this Louisville course.
They do. These are the 66 by 43-inch Firestones, so not the old steel shields he had on Gravedigger number 2, but it just so happens that the set of tires off of Gravedigger 4 happened to mount right up onto Gravedigger 7 just fine, running the similar axle and must have had the same bolt pattern. So Dennis kind of steals that set of wheels and tires off of 4 for this week, and, you know, team leader, the guy that owns the whole operation, he's going to get what he wants. He wants that set of tires to go racing this weekend. He's going to take them, by God. So I think that Dennis's strategy here ahead of time is really interesting, that he's thinking about every little competitive edge he can get on this figure 8 course.
Yeah, and he's taking it to every advantage. And Anderson would do this throughout his career, not just here. Dennis always would do everything he can to get that little bit of an advantage that he thought he could have. Most notably, you could think back to the Thunder on the Beach races, where he'd sometimes switch trucks on the weekend. Well, Digger 3 wasn't cutting it, maybe I'll try 7, or 7's not cutting it, I'll try 3. I'll try these different tire cuts. I'll switch the tires, turn them around. He'll try different things a lot, and this is one of those races that he tries something different, and it seems like it's going to work for him as he quote-unquote qualifies number 1.
And Dennis even made a full set of paddle tires for the sand. I mean, that's a ton of work to try to go out and win one event. So Dennis, a true competitor, wants to go out there and win at any reasonable cost that he can attain, for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We see the drivers prepping for this race. I like the camera shot here, by the way. It's right down the carbs of each truck here. Trucks leave. They're even to the first turn. Invader slows a bit for the inside track. Dennis grabs the lead here. We see Invader steering partially with the rear steering, which on this track, not a smart idea, really, honestly, as he starts to get a little bit loose mid-corner. Anderson's going to come around here. He's going to take the win here, and he's going to tie Gary Porter's time at a 32:40 here. Same time as Carolina Crusher. Ironically, these two trucks on the TV show, at least the week before, they tied. So now they're tying in times the next week.
Evenly matched, for sure. We see the midpoint where this race really takes a turn. Invader takes a horrible, horrible bounce. Again, this is still a leaf-sprung truck at this point, probably up in the neighborhood of around 11,500 pounds maybe, and it's gone on a diet from its days as Evil Force, but boy, still nowhere near the lightweight of a Gravedigger number 7 or a lot of the other 4-link trucks on the tour. And Invader, with a little bit of skewed rear steer and that bad landing, just hangs a hard left through what formerly would have been the infield grass, is now paved. And Dennis all of a sudden has like an 8 truck length lead heading into the second corner, when coming off the jump, they were dead even side by side.
Yeah, dead even side by side, but Anderson's going to go on to take the win here, like we said, second, or tying the quickest time of the night so far. Not a bad run for Dennis right here. Invader's going to cut a promo. He's going to say, "I'll be back," basically indicating that the man under the mask is indeed Arnold Schwarzenegger, ladies and gentlemen. First time you're ever going to hear that, that's Arnold underneath the mask. I swear to you, I looked it up. It's on Google. I'm kidding. Barefoot, Tropical Thunder up next here. Barefoot, quote-unquote, qualified 10th. And, of course, Tropical Thunder in at 5th. Joe mentions that Fred might be the smart one of the group, knowing that on this course is hard on equipment. I don't know where he's getting that. I don't know why he's really saying that, other than the fact that, you know, Fred did kind of every now and then sandbag a little bit in qualifying. He was always accused of it every now and then. So it's not typical, or actually I would say it is typical of seeing Fred lower down on the qualifying sheet around this time in his career.
Yeah, and something I'd like to point out as I'm watching here, it looks like these races may be aired out of order a little bit, because the cars were crushed down here for that very first race with First Blood, Carolina Crusher. The cars were a lot fresher for Gravedigger and Invader, and then it kind of looks like they're crushed down again a little bit more for Tropical Thunder and Barefoot. So not sure why they're showing these a little bit out of order, perhaps, but whatever makes for good television, I guess. They're not the first ones to do it, and they certainly weren't the last.
No, they're not the first, definitely not the last to ever do it either. We're going to see Barefoot get the whole shot right here over Tropical Thunder. Tropical Thunder cuts it pretty tight on this first half, and in the second half of the first turn, he actually gets onto the curbing, and this might be one of the best instances you could ever see of tire reverberation in these trucks, as we see the front tires of Tropical Thunder kind of like bouncing back and forth on the rims. It's an incredible shot. I can really only compare it to a shot of Destroyer years later going down the straightaway in Las Vegas at the World Finals, where you just see the tires bouncing up and down and making the truck bounce up and down as well going down the straightaway. That's two of the best shots I can think of to really show this tire reverberation that we see right here with Tropical Thunder. Something that you rarely see in these trucks, and man, when you see it, it's something to watch because you just can't believe that these tires would do that going down a straightaway like Destroyer was, or like what you're seeing here with Tropical Thunder, where they're bouncing side to side on the rim. Really causes them to lose a lot of traction. The truck's going to push wide, and that's the only mistake that you're going to need to lose a race against Fred Schaefer in Barefoot. He pushes wide. Fred Schaefer sails around him in that outside lane and does not look back.
Doesn't look back at all. And not only Wayne's cranking on the wheel trying to get it to turn, he feels this awful vibration, I'm sure, in the cab through the steering wheel, probably thinks there's something wrong, and decides to just kind of go around the crush cars instead of jumping over. He probably thought he had done some severe front end damage, but the truck gathers itself up. He eventually comes around and finishes the race, but Fred has just taken off, and easy victory, but not without a little bit of drama. Through the last turn, that front-facing four-link truck was known to do this on occasion, especially with a lot of grip here. The truck just kind of hikes up and lifts that inside rear tire. And at the time, crashes aren't super common on television, not like they are today. And Joe just about loses his mind, saying Barefoot almost crashed, almost went up on his side, but he pulls it out. Fred just kind of continued through the corner, and the rear end just kind of softly let itself back down as he straightened out. Brilliant driving by Fred. He may not have even known that the suspension was oscillating that much, but interesting little commentary there from Joe trying to keep things exciting despite the blowout in this race.
Yeah, I mean, he had to do something to try to make this race sound exciting right here. And honestly, it is a little exciting whenever you see a right rear tire start to come up here. But man, like you said, it's almost like Fred didn't even know it happened. He's exiting that corner perfectly. Barefoot's going to go into a 32.45, which is just a little tick slower than Crusher and Gravedigger, as the replay is going to show the tire issue again for Tropical Thunder. And that reverberation, man, when you see it on the replay and they slow it down a little bit, that's when you can really see what we're talking about. And man, back and forth. It would not surprise me at all if Wayne hopped out of that truck and just looked over the entire front end and did think that there was something wrong. The exit of the corner after the reverberation, I'm not sure if it was him thinking something was wrong or if the tires were bouncing back and forth so much that he almost overcorrected the steering and just missed the cars that way, or he turned around because the steering box wasn't as fast as he thought it was. I don't know. It was weird at the exit of that corner. But I understand why it was weird, because you had a very weird situation going on with the front of the Tropical Thunder machine.
Certainly didn't look good either way. I mean, he certainly overcorrected, and then he kind of starts to turn back toward the cars and then just kind of continues on his course around. So I think Wayne knew he was out of it at that point anyway already.
Next race is kind of unique actually here, Matt. We've got Taurus and Monster Patrol. Identical trucks really right here with the exception of the body, and one's got a giant wing on the back. I mean, I believe that's
no
Taurus.
wing. No wing.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Monster Patrol does not have a wing on for this race. You're right. I completely forgot about that. I'm just so used to seeing Monster Patrol with a wing. I'd forgot about it right here, that they'd actually taken it off for this event. Like we said, two identical really looking trucks right here. Both trucks running almost, you could say, a Snoop Nose looking body Chevrolet that would become famous around this era right here. Like we said, Monster Patrol is on the Taurus 4 chassis. So Taurus 4 had been sold to Paul Schaefer at this point, and now it's taking on the latest and greatest Taurus.
Yeah, which is basically a carbon copy. As you see the two trucks sitting side by side heading to the starting line, I mean, every bar in the roll cage is in the same place. The bodies are the same. They've got the same axles. The engine is different. Now, Schaefer has put a Keith Black Hemi in the Monster Patrol, whereas Taurus has the dual overhead cam McGee engine, which I hate to say was a really bad choice for them for 93, because that engine gave them nothing but problems at a multitude of different events throughout the season. I think had Jackie had the big block Chevy from previous years, he would have done a lot better in the points, but we're here talking about it so many years later. Now, Monster Patrol did not have a wing yet. They put that wing on. I'm almost certain the first event that they did for the wing was Bloomsburg, which was another full month after this at the Jamboree, because Paul did a couple qualifying runs with just the framework for the wing in place and then got the wing on for the following day in competition. So no wing yet. the Monster Patrol, in my opinion, I like it without the wing. I think it looks better. I don't think it needed the wing. I love the look at it here, and then especially right at the end when Tom had it before it turns into Bulldozer. No wing Monster Patrol, I'm a fan. I think it just makes the truck look better. It's cleaner.
Now, while we're on the subject of the wing, I have to talk about something that I saw here recently that really, honestly, made me laugh harder than I think I've seen in a long time. As most of us know that are fans of this podcast, Paul Schaefer Jr. actually does a lot of oval track racing. He does a lot of stuff you'll see maybe on low budget TV. You happen to post what I'm talking about right here. They talked about Paul Schaefer coming and running over with them, Paul Schaefer Jr. coming and running it over on like the West Coast every now and then. And they thought he'd have a little bit of advantage, so they posted a meme. I swear to God, it's not Photoshop, but it looks like Paul Schaefer's car looks like it has a big wing on the back of it for some reason. It looks like it came right off of Monster Patrol. One of the best Photoshop jobs. One of the best Photoshop jobs I think I've seen in a long time. It's Paul Jr.'s car, like we said, with the old 93 looking wing of Monster Patrol on the back of it. A nice nod to his dad. I loved it. Made me laugh. Go look at Low Budget TV's page. I'm pretty sure it's on there still somewhere. It's made me chuckle. I loved it. But as we talk about this race that we've got right here, Matt, like we said, basically two identical trucks, but one driver, very experienced behind the wheel, the other, experienced mud racer, maybe not so much in monster truck racing, and that's the story that we're going to hear about Paul Schaefer throughout this entire night. Rookie monster truck driver on the launch. Taurus is puffing some smoke, and the two have a decent first corner. However, the difference here is the first jump. Monster Patrol is going to take a real nasty landing after the first jump. He lands a little too hard on throttle. It's going to bounce that truck all over the place, and that bounce is what's going to end up hurting him right here as Taurus is going to come around that last turn. Honestly, his bounce perfect leads him into that corner very well. He's going to get the slowest winning time so far of a 35.5. And on replay, we're going to see again this angle of Monster Patrol's trouble in the jump. Joe says you have to keep your foot in the throttle, and that's exactly what he didn't do right there.
He sure didn't. Well, he landed on throttle, and then
he landed on throttle.
He drove out, and then he got out too early.
Yes.
The truck kind of bounced back up to the point where it was in the air, and you could see when he let off, the front end just dives down because there's no forward momentum pulling, keeping the tires spinning, and the truck just hits and like dead falls on the front end, and you can see how hard it hits. And in the other lane, Taurus took an awfully nasty hit over that first set of cars too. He lined up nice and straight for that car and really launched the truck probably further than anybody has at this point of the night. Lands right on the X. You could see how hard he lands. I can't imagine it was too good for the suspension or the wheels or that engine that's now smoking even more as he comes around this last corner. So despite the issues for Taurus with the engine compartment or in the engine department, he takes the easy win over Paul Schaefer just due to the inexperience here landing on this asphalt. Paul's going to have to try to regroup and come back maybe as a fast loser for round number 2.
That's exactly what he's going to have to do here. Unfortunate for Paul Schaefer, but at this point, as they're telling us on the show and they're telling this story, he is the rookie in the field, and it's no surprise to me that the rookie would go out in round number 1, taking on a former world champion like Jack Lemon Jr. Next two trucks up here, though, is Kodiak and Predator, completely different trucks at this point. They use similar design aspects with the front-facing links and subframe. However, leaf springs on Kodiak and coilovers on Predator, you got to give the edge and suspension department to the Predator machine.
Edge and suspension and edge in the tire department. We talked about Dennis putting a special set of tires on for this event. Pizzo does too. By this point, Pizzo had the back cut Goodyears on the yellow rims because he ran them in Jacksonville, which was not only before this episode, but it was earlier in the year. I think that Jacksonville show somewhere around April. I've not been able to pin the exact event date down, but I'm pretty sure it was somewhere around April due to the paint scheme on Gravedigger and some of the other clues that are on those trucks at the time. But Allen switches back to his old set of really, really buffed down tires for this event that were on one of his other leaf spring trucks. And there, you can see there's basically no tread left on these at all, almost like racing slicks for their day. And you can tell Predator's got a lot more traction heading off the line. He gets the early jump, and then suddenly in the right lane, Kodiak's in all kinds of mechanical trouble.
Oh, yeah. Predator takes off. Kodiak takes off with him, and then all of a sudden, he's nowhere to be seen. Joe mentions that he's lost the front drive shaft out of it. Predator's going to cruise around this track for an easy win, and I think once Alan knows he's ahead, doesn't push the damage, doesn't push the truck, exactly like Alan Pizzo, honestly. It's a cakewalk victory, as they say, for Predator at a 40.63. On the replay, though, we get a good sideline shot of this drive line coming apart. And, Matt, this is probably, with the exception of a few other pieces of videotape out there, this particular spot, this particular show, you're going to see one of the best explosions of a drive shaft you think you're ever going to see right here, and why we incorporate more than just one safety loop going forward, particularly after this. I'm imagining that this particular explosion of the drive shaft is what prompted the 4 or 5 that you see on there now.
Well, he's got a few loops on there, and that was already the regulation, but we see Bendler come out of the truck. He doesn't even make it the whole way around the track. He stops just past the halfway point, gets out, and boy, he just shakes his head looking at all the destruction underneath that Kodiak truck. We then go to a U.S. Hot Rod official picking up parts and pieces of the drive shaft loops, all kind of stuff scattered across the Louisville Motor Speedway. And we go to that replay you mentioned. I'm trying to see here. It looks like there's at least 3 drive shaft loops plus the pinion yoke shields, but something just was not right in the driveline of Kodiak, because Mark had issues with front drive shafts all season to this point, kept blowing them out, most of the time landing off of jumps, where the suspension is cycling and causing it to break. Here, the truck's just accelerating on a flat piece of asphalt, and the drive shaft just spins its way into oblivion. I mean, you could see it's fine, and then it starts like oscillating and getting out of its true spin profile, and then the thing just explodes and smacks into the bottom of the truck, and parts everywhere, as we said. Joe gives the opportunity to mention that the trucks have the transmission blanket, the drive shaft protection rings and loops to keep things from flying, really out all over the place. The parts did go downward, which is good, instead of outward. So the safety features at the time for US Hot Rod doing their job. Bendler's got a lot of work to do to get the thing ready for the next day's competition. I think he ends up running it in 2-wheel drive anyway for the rest of the weekend. But just that truck on TV just gave nothing but bad luck for Mark Bendler.
Yeah, and if you look at the angles of the drive shaft of that particular Kodiak truck versus the rest of the truck in the field, it's a very high angled drive shaft. So honestly, you could almost expect a failure like this to happen.
I don't know if I'd expect it. I'm looking at the replay again here of like Predator and Kodiak, and the drive shaft angles aren't that different between them. So I think something maybe just wasn't mechanically quite right with the Kodiak truck for this here. The truck wasn't at top speed. He was doing maybe 20 mile an hour, 25 mile an hour when the thing lets loose. So just bad luck or lack of maintenance, one of those two. But Mark kept his truck in pretty good shape. I'm going to say it was more just something was wrong that they didn't realize.
Yeah, I would say more of it's a bad luck thing. I don't know. The angle of that drive shaft always, even on that truck specifically, just, I don't know. It always worried me every time I would see it, even on TV as a younger kid. You'd look at it and be like, wow, compared to some of these really fast trucks, that's a really high angled drive shaft. You obviously point out Predator here. Predator also has a little bit better suspension underneath of it. Maybe allows it to soak down a little bit more when it takes off. Here, Kodiak, leaf sprung truck, I don't know if those drive shaft angles are working for him. And that's, I don't know. It's just something I always thought about this particular Kodiak truck. And I could be very wrong. I'm just pointing that out. It's just something that I always saw back in the day when I would watch these events. I'd be like, man, it's just, that angle is so high.
Yeah, I mean, it could be anything, but maybe Mark Bendler knows if he's listening out there, or Eric Crush. Maybe you can ask Mark on our behalf if you're listening, because we'd like to know what caused all those issues on the Kodiak truck back then. So we go to Luann back in the studio. She's going to update us with our round 1 winners and their times, and they each get an additional 10 points for their round 1 victory in terms of the Monster Wars points. And then we see our 3 fastest losers that are going to get to move on here. First Blood, Invader, and Monster Patrol coming back for round 2. That leaves sitting out Tropical Thunder, who had a disastrous round 1 race, and Kodiak, who didn't finish. So kind of a survival of the fittest at this point in the bracket. Basically, if you're still able to get around the track fine, you get to move on.
Predator is going to cut a promo here on Monster Patrol as we go to commercial, and then as we come back, Luann Lee is going to introduce us into a produced segment right here for Paul Schaefer, his success on Moss Patrol, Mud Patrol as well, and his wife, Marianne, as they're at the local pool hall. And Paul wins, of course. We're going to go to one of Paul's junkyards where he claims he's the biggest junker in the country at this point. And we're going to see a lot of Paul and Marianne's home, including a shot from the hot tub where they're living the dream. Is they mentioned the fact that he's rich, I guess, at this point. There's almost lifestyles of the rich and Schaefer at this point on this this little vignette. It's kind of cool. I like the vignette. All you have to do is work to earn this, and that's exactly what Paul Schaefer has done in his career. He can never argue that Paul Schaefer wasn't a hard worker. Later on in Monster Wars, though, Matt, I'm not sure which episode it is, but we're going to see a little bit behind the scenes and a little bit of a peek between him and Tom Martin, who seems to have had a falling out, and who actually owns the name Mud Patrol.
That would actually be from our second episode in Louisville, which was day one action on Saturday, but it's the interesting story of Paul Schaefer versus Tom Martin and fighting over that Mud Patrol name. And I guess we find out that Paul ended up winning because Tom ends up continuing to campaign the Super Trooper from 1994 onwards. So interesting that they didn't really cover any mud action in Monster Wars beyond this feud of Tom Martin and Paul Schaefer, but they kind of painted Paul as a little bit of a villain in that aspect because basically he's got the money to pay for the lawyers and everything, and he's going to end up with the name. So Paul maintained he bought the name. Tom said he didn't. I guess the courts decided one way or another, and that's how that whole thing ended up working out.
Yep, exactly. Obviously, Tom Martin made the name, but whenever he started introducing Paul Schaefer behind the wheel of it, somewhere along the lines, he ended up owning the name of it. Also, as well, he made the Monster Patrol name, and arguably one of the more popular trucks at this point in this era is Monster Patrol. Going forward, it's going to end up being way more popular than it is at this current timeline. But speaking of Monster Patrol, we end that segment. They come out of that segment, and it's Monster Patrol and Predator. Joe says this time only winners go on, referring to the fact that Monster Patrol is a fast loser here. Predator's going to jump out to an early lead, but Paul hangs in tight on that outside line. Over the cars, Monster Patrol takes another rough landing, but it's a lot easier of a landing than he had before in the previous round against Taurus. Entering the second turn, Monster Patrol is going to take the lead. Predator falls behind, and he just can't make it up this time. Monster Patrol is going to take the win here with a 33.75. Why is that important? That's the quickest ET of the night right here from your rookie, Paul Schaefer.
A good run for sure, and we see that Paul got back into the throttle a lot quicker over that first set of cars when he landed. The rear end kicked out again, but he was able to stay on the throttle this time, drive out of it. Not low ET of the night so far. We had the 32-second runs from a couple trucks in round one, but he's definitely improved a bunch to where he's right there with the rest of the field now.
On the replay, we see Monster Patrol making up time over the jump and into the second turn. Joe gives him some triumphant commentary right here as Monster Patrol is crossing the finish line on the replay. Got to tell you, Joe, he's not over-exaggerating a lot here, but I got to tell you, he's putting a lot into these finishes for some of these guys.
There's the man with the mission, the rookie, Paul Schaefer. He has something to prove as we go into round number 2. He comes back as the fastest loser. Hey, this time, winners only make it on. Predator, Monster Patrol, on the start. Predator with the lead. Alan Piesel drives Predator into turn number 2. Paul Schaefer is playing catch-up. Predator heads to the cars, and the big jump. Whoa! Monster Patrol again takes a bad hump, but he seemed to learn. He kept his foot in it. And now they're dead even going into turn number 4. Monster Patrol picks up the lead. Predator backs out. Predator is oh no, Predator can't do it. Predator could not straighten out. Monster Patrol, the rookie, going to round number 3. A win for Paul Schaefer and Monster Patrol.
Yeah, Paul really is showing the improvement here on the figure 8 track. This is the first time we really get to see him on Monster Wars for the season, other than a disastrous first night in West Lebanon. So the first real success we're seeing from Paul Schaefer on the season in terms of the TV side of it. And, you know, he's going to now go on to the semifinals.
Yeah, rookie in semifinals. He's lost one race. He's won another race. He's even on the night. He's batting 500. He's probably still pretty happy, though. He's going to semifinals here on Monster Wars and on television, as Invader is getting ready to take on Taurus right here, as our alter egos trade bars back and forth. And Matt, I honestly, this whole interview they do with here, these two characters, could have really been something they could have used later on in life to promote that movie from 2011, Cowboys and Aliens. I really think that they could have used that whole promo to just cover that audio, cover the video of that whole trailer for that particular movie with the audio from this.
If you say so. I've not seen the movie myself, so I'll have to rely on your expertise. And
I could get into a whole story about how that movie was made. Somebody bought a bunch of comic books, presented these sales to somebody in Hollywood, and then eventually, hey, we've got a movie about comic that nobody knew about.
Well, sounds like all of them to me, because I'm not a big comic guy. But we head into the promotional consideration on our show here, which is the original, again, syndication run. We got a Mortal Kombat ad. We've got another.
No, hold on. You didn't say it right. It's Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, you could pipe the sound in there if you like. I'm not good at that. We've got the Acclaim connection here for promotional consideration with Mortal Kombat, NBA Jam, and Super Nintendo, I guess Sega Genesis, and two of the hottest games really throughout that time. So we then pitch it into commercial and come back with Joe Lowe saying it'd take a shoehorn to get another person in the stands at this sold out Louisville Motor Speedway. And we got a full grandstand, and we've even got people sitting out on the grass on the hill on the backside of the track. So to your point earlier, I think that this is one of the better attended years of Louisville overall.
Yeah, I can agree with you there. I don't know, just from watching it on a television standpoint, though, it seems like Louisville at this time had started to slowly downgrade. That's just my opinion. After, like you said, we watched 1990. We don't get 1991 on TV, even though it's a high marquee event on the USHRA calendar. We don't get to see it in 91 on television. 92 comes around, arguably not one of the better shows of that season, but still one that produces some surprise winners. And then 93 comes around, and you don't have what really made Louisville famous, and that's the car pad in the center of the track. To me, visually on television, it started to downgrade just a little bit over the years. That was my point to that. It
makes me wonder, maybe the car pad removal had something to do with the oval track cars, because they ran the oval cars in 92 as well. I think they might have even the years prior to that too. But in 92, maybe somebody drug something out into the track from the car pad that ended up, causing an issue for the stock cars. Who knows? But yeah, I could see where you're saying maybe they're trying to cut a few corners here on cost, or for whatever reason, we've got the difference in the track now. So either way,
I would lean more towards the stock car thing that caused the removal of the car pad than I would anything else. Like I said, it's pure speculation.
Yeah.
But that would be more of the reason why I would think that you would not see the car pad anymore, is to probably prevent some debris from getting out there on the track. And that's perfectly understandable from the stock car point. They're going a lot faster, and they don't have soft walls yet.
No, they don't. So we're going to get the Taurus and Invader matchup here. Taurus taking the early lead, but that smoke starts coming out again.
Yeah, unfortunately for Taurus, it seems like the engine issue is going to really hurt him right here. The trucks take off, more smoke from Taurus. Despite this, Jackie builds a decent lead, though, and loses it coming out of the corner. The truck stumbles. Unfortunate for Taurus, it starts to start belching smoke out from underneath of it into the second turn. We change camera angles. We look at an Invader, and honestly, this is the best that Ray Perkowski's truck has ever looked on television, at least. Coolant and stuff fluttering out of the overflows, but Perkowski's going to still carry on the speed. He's going to carry through the second turn. He's going to take a win over Taurus right here. Probably the biggest win, I would say, in the Invader truck's career at this point.
Still not the fastest time of the night. We had 2:32.4s in round one.
Oh, but, sorry, my bad.
Yeah, we're getting faster though. With a lot of these other trucks, we've got, like you said, Invader never looked better. That ISO shot, as Invader has taken the lead in the third turn and has stretched out ahead of Taurus, the truck's just humming. You can hear the RPMs way up. The yellow body and the pink and black lettering against the twilight sky just looks really, really good. Ray sends it pretty hard over the final jump, even though he's got a good lead, and Taurus just kind of has to bow out. The engine problem certainly hurting Taurus, and a bit of an issue coming out of that first turn where Jackie has to overcorrect and gives up a good bit of time to Invader. That's where Perkowski really drew even.
Yeah, and my mistake too as well. I said Moss Patrol had set the fastest time earlier as well. I was wrong. I completely forgot about Digger and Carolina Crushers 32.4s going into this round. However, 33.75 for Moss Patrol, 32.71 for Invader. Obviously, they've picked up a bunch of time in their perspective points in this round. As we move on to our next matchup right here, Gravedigger First Blood on paper sounds like an incredible matchup right here, but this is where I get a little triggered just a little bit here. Joe says First Blood broke a shock in round number 1, and Dennis loaned him a shock for this race. And then in the preceding segment to follow, our characters completely just come crap all over this. And they talk about how I don't need your help to win, Gravedigger. Well, I don't need to give you my parts to win. Just the whole segment made me almost angry listening to it, because our sport of monster truck racing has been built on the fact that we are a family, that we share parts, we help each other out so we can have trucks make it into the next round. This promo between First Blood and Gravedigger, just like I said, it craps all over it. It's horrible for a kid, by the way. You're marketing this to kids and you're basically telling them, hey, be selfish. That's what I got from that whole promo right there exchange. And I don't know why it made me so mad, but just listening to it, oh, Matt.
Well, we saw how that turned out. I mean, pretty much everybody's selfish today, so it must have rung true for everybody as a kid.
I can agree with you there. There's a lot of selfish people out there in the world, unfortunately, but that right here, that was not a good lesson for kids.
The best part about it, I think, is that was all fabricated for them to be able to have something to do a promo on, because the two trucks were running totally different kinds of shocks. Digger's got long coilovers. First Blood has kind of like a homemade nitrogen shock from what I can recall. I think Fuchs had those made on his own. So they wouldn't have been using the similar shock. Digger definitely didn't loan him a shock, maybe some other part that would have been usable, but definitely not a shock. So
yeah, you look all around on that truck, by the way, and you don't see a coilover on the back of one corner.
Bright
of that
green,
truck.
There's still 8 bright green shocks on First Blood. So that I don't know why they decided to go that angle, but I guess they needed to fill some time. So
yeah, and they probably needed something to talk about. A problem here that I have with this is, number one, like you said, trucks obviously have completely different shocks on them. I doubt Dennis is carrying spare parts for a nitrogen shock in that trailer of his. I'm sorry, it's probably just not happening at this point in Digger's
especially
career.
not one that's special like the ones that are on First Blood that weren't an industry standard shock at that point.
Exactly. Number two being, I'm going to guarantee you they didn't have interviews from these drivers after this race.
Yeah, probably not.
So I don't understand the fabrication of the story right here. I don't understand the fabrication of the promo characters. It just, like I said, it's one of the time-honored traditions in monster truck racing to share your parts with people and help them out between rounds, so you can actually go out there and beat that person on the track. And I'll guarantee you, if Dennis did happen to give him a part to get into this round, and Dennis goes on to take the victory, Dennis is proud of that. Hey, you had my stuff on your truck, and I still beat you.
Yeah, and that's something that kind of hits a point in my mind about the Help Wanted show that was on TLC, where they had the people trying out for a job at the Bigfoot shop, and they did like a kind of like a personality test with some of the final people that were on the show and being eliminated. And Kramer asks, if this guy needs you to help him get the truck ready for the next round and he needs to borrow a part from you, would you give it to him? And the one guy's like, no way, he's my competitor, I'm not going to help him out. And then they just like immediately eliminate him from the show.
Exactly.
Because that's what the monster truck guys do. We work together, we're a family, we're going to win our race on the racetrack, not in the pits. So that's something that came up as you were going on your rant on your soapbox
on that particular point of that show. That's something I had to rant about, because like I said, that's one of the time-honored traditions of monster truck racing, and they just completely wipe it out with the characters.
Yeah, so either way, Digger looks like it doesn't matter, because he ends up taking the win here. And we go through the cab of Digger's the truck's lead, and then we see that Digger's got the lead on the outside even, and continues that lead over the jump. The inside on the second half of the track, Dennis uses to his advantage and cruises to an easy victory. Joe Lowe says Dennis has never had a win in Louisville, and that 1993 may be his year. We talked about that 91 show not being televised. Dennis beat Jim Kramer in the finals on Saturday night.
On Saturday night, Dennis did beat Jim Kramer in the finals in 1991. However, for the sake of television, it's not talked about right here. And later on in this show, you're going to have Dennis talking about how he's been trying to chase the win here since 1989, which is the truth.
Well,
Anderson trying to win here at Louisville was something to behold for at least 3 years until 1991.
Yeah, and Dennis had the 89 show wrapped up, it seemed. That first night, he had everybody covered, and then they had the rain delay, which actually pushed the finish of that race into Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And they run the race with him and Gary Porter. Dennis blows like a power steering pump or something, gets into the wall, taps it, can't get the truck going. Not only does he lose that race, but he can't get the truck fixed in time for the Sunday show, which was immediately after with no brakes. So it was a double whammy for him there in 89. Of course, nothing but mechanical problems in 90. He does get a win in 91, but Dennis never explicitly says himself that he's never won there. He just says he's been trying to master the track since 89. So they kind of took a little creative license with this to say that Dennis had never won. But in this race, he wins. And
yeah, he certainly does.
He's going to go on to the semifinals. Now this is where we get our new low ET of the night, 31.83 Digger. Even with the little bit of a lead to his advantage, he still punches in fast ET so far. And after the race, Dennis says he has to feather that throttle to keep the tires hooked up and wants to stay out of that wall.
Yeah, and that's something that I can guarantee you Anderson is thinking about from the year prior, which we've covered on this show, where he slides sideways into that wall with those Goodyears on. That's part of the reason he's wearing the Firestones now. Arguably, with the run-up to the cars that he has at this show, he's probably not going to get that much air again, and that could have been another reasoning factor. We didn't talk about that earlier when we talked about the car stack being cut out. They're not getting as much air right here now as well, so that's a determining factor into why you see these trucks running the way they are right here. They're still getting air, but they're not getting anywhere near as much air as they were on these Louisville tracks. As we move on, Lou Ann's going to introduce us to another segment here about the women and wives of the sport. And we see, speaking of Dennis Anderson, his wife Julie, Carrie Bendler, Kathy Schaefer, Wendy Smozanik. By the way, Wendy and Wayne Smozanik. Great names. Just got to point that out.
WWS.
There you go. And then we've got Cheryl Pekowski right here, as well as they talk about their fears, the safety of the trucks, and their friendships, which we see in a couple of clips here. They're all holding hands and cheering each other on. It's a good segment about the spouses of the drivers.
It's really cool, and I'm glad that they got some camera time for the women that help support these guys for so many years out on the road and at home. We get to see them get the spotlight at least for a couple minutes here on the show.
Barefoot and Carolina Crusher is going to be your last round 2 matchup that we have. And I got to tell you, 2 of the best trucks in the country lining up against each other right here. This may be the best matchup of the night so far. Crusher's going to cut a promo, and we don't have a Barefoot promo because Fred Schaefer is smart and didn't sign that contract.
He literally vetoed the character.
We have a camera on the front of Carolina Crusher. Something to point out before this, in the previous race, they talked about how they had an in-cab shot of Gravedigger. Now they're pointing out we have an in-front shot of Carolina Crusher. You're going to see what the driver sees. Did we just do this a race before?
A little bit of a different shot, I guess. Instead of having the camera pointed on the driver, it's looking out the front. So cool way to sell it. They were doing a lot of these new camera shots in 93. We had a camera on the front of Barefoot for a lot of the season, not only just at Monster Wars shows, but they used that footage on Trucks and Tractor Power as well with the camera on Barefoot. So the camera technology getting better throughout these years, where they can put a small camera out in the truck somewhere and have it not take up a whole bunch of space. So
yeah, I don't mind the camera at all. It's just that they pointed out in the shot with Gravedigger. Now they're going to point it out in the shot with Carolina Crusher. You're going to see what the driver sees. I don't understand the wording there for the Carolina Crusher one, because it's on the very front of the truck, whereas Anderson's was up in the cab, which is exactly what the driver would see. That was my point. It was like it didn't make sense between the 2 rounds as to why they did that. It's just it was weird to me. I like the cameras. Don't get me wrong. It's a great camera placement. It's just an odd way to call that camera on Carolina Crusher. That was my thought.
I gotcha. Well, the trucks are going to leave even here, and
yeah, let's get to the race, by the way.
Quickly, it looks like Fred's going to take the early lead, but on the outside, I'd say Crusher's hanging tight enough to where the race in reality is just about dead even when they hit the first set of cars, because we see that front shot out Carolina Crusher. We see Barefoot not too far in the distance, And when we know that when the trucks are even into the second corner, the inside truck's got the big advantage. Well, here, Gary's just enough back, maybe 3 truck lengths or so? That's about what you'd call the difference that they hope to make up in the second half.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Gary's going to have to do right here. And even with the big Dodge horsepower on the exit of that last corner, Fred Schaefer can't make up the time. Crusher is going to take that inside lane, and he's going to get the win over the world champion right here by a margin of victory of 0.04 seconds. It's a 31.56 to a 31.60. And when they show the trucks coming across the finish line, Porter's got about a 3/4 of a truck length lead. I mean, that might be a little generous saying 3/4 of a truck length, but still, Porter now has the low ET of the night, and Porter does it in a race where both trucks set very fast times. Great run from Carolina Crusher. Obviously the truck that has been pushed the hardest on this evening.
Barefoot, the power out of that final corner is just incredible. And I think where the race is won here, if you go back and look the entry to the second turn, Porter rides the curb the whole way around. He had to have cut probably 20 or 30 feet off of the corner compared to if he had been running, another lane up closer to the cones.
Mm-hmm.
We've got 2 lanes of the racetrack here that each truck has to work with. Porter is on the bottom half of the first lane the whole way around that corner, whereas a lot of the other guys would kind of swing wide and diamond off the corner. Porter just keeps the truck pinned up against that curb and, like I said, takes out a lot of linear feet of travel, and that probably is the difference in margin of victory here, I think.
Yeah, and if you watch the trucks as they come over the finish line, Porter, yes, he's booking it to the cars here, but his truck's actually going to launch and go a little nose down, indicating he doesn't quite have a bunch of momentum, whereas Barefoot skies it over that final jump and the exit and the momentum of that last corner. So that particular set of corners really displayed what Louisville was all about, really, and how fast you could exit on the outside versus trying to maintain yourself on that inside lane. That's kind of the picture-perfect race that they've always wanted to have here at the Speedway, honestly.
For sure, and it's the closest race of the night so far with the 2 fastest times, really.
And speaking of close races, Luann's going to point out to us here, Gravedigger, Carolina Crusher, rematch in the semifinals from the previous show in Jacksonville where they tied. And, of course, Monster Patrol's impossible dream of making it to the finals as a rookie.
I like the setup for the semifinals here. They show the storyline from the week prior. They've got the storyline of tonight with Paul Schaefer, the rookie, still in it. And the door is kind of wide open for the finals for either Monster Patrol or Invader. And then you've got the heavyweight showdown on the other side of the bracket with Gravedigger and Carolina Crusher.
Yeah, and when we come back from commercial here, we're going to go to Jim Davison, and we're going to be in the middle of the crowd here, and they're pretty riled up. And I'm not surprising to hear that it's a 50-50 split on this Louisville crowd, because over the years in Louisville, Digger and Carolina Crusher are the 2 trucks that are probably booked consistently at this show over the years. Alternate out Bigfoot, alternate out Barefoot, alternate out Taurus with other truck here. Digger and Crusher, the 2 trucks are kind of mainstays here in Louisville. And you've got the number 1 driver for each camp right here. You've got I'm going to guarantee you the highlights from these 2 trucks have been played from this particular speedway on television multiple times as well. So Digger and Crusher, this lineup, it does not shock me at all that we have a 50-50 split.
Well, and the thing that's a real bummer here is they edit in this camera shot about 2 seconds too early, because in reality, Jim worked the crowd up on his own, designated half for Digger, half for Crusher, and told him to chant. And you see him pointing back and forth to either side, which is a real bummer, because if they had kind of shown it as more of an organic thing, I think it would have been a little bit better.
Yeah, I was trying to not say that portion of it because I really wanted everything I just said to sound amazing, and then I was going to wait for you to come in and just completely ruin it all. But
well, that's why
it was fabricated. It was fabricated, yes, but I still say I'm not surprised to see it.
It's great. Split. It's still great.
Yeah.
I like that he says it's like the epic long battle of tastes great, less filling on a children's show. On a children's show, that the kids have no idea what he's even talking about, because it was a beer commercial, campaign from the 80s. But they transition this into a promo with the alter egos where they can hear the crowd cheering for each of them. And I think that was kind of a interesting way of breaking the fourth wall in the show a little bit. And the way that they kind of transition into that promo and then head into the race itself.
You listen to it, you actually hear where they had to splice in some more audio, where they just kind of like restarted the audio again from them saying Digger and Crusher. If you just hear, you can hear a little split in there where they restarted it so that the characters could keep talking. Like you said, it's an interesting break of the fourth wall, and I admit the promo here didn't bother me all that much.
Semi-final action with the sellout crowd in Louisville, and who are they behind? Is it Gravedigger or Crusher? Jim Davidson knows. It's like the epic long battle of Tastes Great, Less Filling. We never had an answer to that one. We're getting an answer to this one. Digger and Crusher going at it. Let's get to it. This crowd is nearly as loud as the monsters themselves. Half are screaming for Carolina Crusher and half for the Gravedigger.
Listen to that. The fans know I'm the very best ever.
Yeah, they know you're the best, all right? The best of the worst.
You fool! No one treats me that way for long.
Digger, dig this. I'm the one they love, and I'm the one they have a crush on. And I'll pump them up even more when I crush you in the next race.
Yeah, it's just, your normal Monster Wars promo. They're just, saying they're going to beat each other, and then we go on to the actual race. So
yeah, we got Skeletor and they got a construction worker here. Then we actually get into what matters, and that's Gary Porter and Dennis Anderson. We see the stat sheet on Digger and Crusher. I love this, by the way. We go in and we do that individual shot of the truck with all of the stats underneath of it. Great thing Monster Wars did. I love that. It gave everybody information about each truck we see in the semifinals right here. The other thing to point out here, too, is we've gone from complete light to complete darkness out here on the track. So the track has changed. It's cooled off here, and you don't know how these monsters are going to handle it. Obviously, between rounds right here, we've had some circle track racing going on.
Yeah, we had that probably as our intermission here between the second round and the semifinals. At least a couple of your races anyway. So I love the way that they have the camera set up for this, because you have the front stretch lights, which presumably are the brighter lights, because that's on the front stretch where the crowd is. They're being lit as well, casting over top of these two trucks sitting in the center of the track. Digger's got the red headlights on. We've got the dark sides of the trucks facing us because the whole infield isn't lit quite as well as the front stretch. And I think it's just the perfect stage for this kind of a shootout, where you've got the backlighting. You don't get to see it that often in a space like that with monster trucks. And when the trucks take off, you see the smoke and the exhaust coming out of the headers of both trucks. I think it's one of the most cool and iconic shots from the entire season on Monster Wars, that you get to see these two trucks taking off next to each other. It's like a Top Fuel funny car shootout, in the darkness when they do their qualifying, and the flames coming out of the headers are the only things missing here.
Yeah, and to point out, a truck with this kind of backlighting, I mean, there is no better truck to have in that situation than Gravedigger. Look at the red headlights on the front, the spooky paint job in the back on the sides. I mean, come on. That's like the truck to have in a backlit situation like that, because you can definitely see what's coming at you, and the way the red headlights look on the front of it just adds to it. It's so cool. I love this shot, just like what you pointed out. Yeah, like you said, one of the most iconic shots of the '93 season right here at this Louisville semifinal race. Like we said, trucks full darkness, backlighting. They take off, and they're even midway through the first turn. Digger cuts the corner entry extremely tight and draws even over the cars, which technically puts Dennis in the lead at this point. Dennis is going to open up that lead on the inside line. Crusher basically completely cutting in to the inside lane on the exit of the corner here, but Dennis just sails Digger over the finish line, and Anderson is going to take that extremely cool looking backlit Gravedigger truck flying over the cars to the final.
A lot of the excitement of this race also comes from Jolo's commentary. So we're going to pipe that in. And the way that he builds the excitement throughout this entire race is just awesome.
As they line up, let's take a look at the stats on our two competitors for this semifinal race. Gravedigger, Dennis Anderson up in the saddle, the 10,000-pound Chevy bow-tie block engine powered by 1,400-plus horses. And the Rodec 557 powers the big Carolina Crusher. It weighs in at 10,000 pounds, again, with 1,400 horses. Very evenly matched. This could be the race of the night. Crusher and Digger wait for the green light. It's showtime! A puff of smoke out of Carolina Crusher, evenly matched going into the first turn. Around they come. Gravedigger trying to keep up with Carolina Crusher. He has the longer way to go as they approach that first set of cars. Side by side. Oh, they jump over the cars. And now we're going to find out who the toughest monster truck is. Gravedigger opens up a lead. Carolina Crusher battles to come back. Dennis Anderson doing a super job of driving. And Dennis Anderson just drives his way into the finals in Louisville. This could be the first time ever he gets a win. The time, 30.12.
So as they say right here, Dennis is going to actually put down quick ET of the night here, 30.12. So we have cut this time down from Dennis at least. What do you want to say here, Matt? 2.4, 2.3 seconds since qualifying?
Well, a 3/4 of a second over the next fastest run of the night. So Dennis just absolutely spanking the track here in Louisville as the track gets cooler. And you'd think that the traction would go down a little bit, but Dennis has got the rhythm down. He's learned to drive the track with this combination of truck and tire and power. And Dennis going into the finals, and Joe says that he's got this track mastered as the replay continues to roll through here. And then we go into our next matchup of Monster Patrol versus Invader.
Yeah, we had our heavyweight side of the matchup. You could arguably say that Crusher and Digger is quote unquote your final round because of the two names that we have in that matchup. Here we've got, I wouldn't necessarily call Ray Perkowski an upstart, but no offense to Ray, he doesn't have many big wins under his belt, and he's probably considered an underdog even in this race against Paul Schaefer. As we see, it's a leaf-sprung truck versus Taurus number 4, essentially, just with a different name on the side of it, and that's Monster Patrol. We see the cards for these two. Monster Patrol, obviously Keith Black Hemi, whereas Invader just has a Chevrolet-powered big block in the side of a Ford truck, by the way, half-breed going on right there. Invader's going to cut a promo saying it's finally time to take on the rookie. This Invader is really, really, really excited to take on this rookie. However, as they leave the line here, Monster Patrol is going to pull the whole shot. Schaefer's going to maintain a lead into the jump. He's going to a lot of air over the cars. He's going to take another rough landing. Invader's going to try to make up the time here. He's going to unload the chassis. He's going to lose grip. He's going to spin out in the middle of the second corner. He's going to hand the win to Monster Patrol. But wait, there's more. As we see here on replay, Joe's going to point out that Monster Patrol looks like it may have been in Invader's lane slightly over the first jump here, and Ray Perkowski has protested the race, and Joe Lowe can't believe that he's not going to take the loss like a man.
They are lined up waiting for the green light. Monster Patrol first on the light. What a great job with that reaction time off the line. That's going to help him. Monster Patrol into turn number 2. Invader lagging behind as they approach the set of cars that's going to launch them skyward. Up and over. Monster Patrol has a lead. Invader tries to correct it. He's all over the track. He straightens out, and Monster Patrol still has that lead. Whoa, Invader, look out! Monster Patrol may have a win here. Monster Patrol, it is all Monster Patrol. He's going to the finals. The rookie's going against Gravedigger. And what happened to Invader? He's backing up. He's still trying to finish the course. What a disappointment for him. Monster Patrol had a lead, but he's playing it very, very close to the outside. It looks as though he's in Invader's lane as he approaches the cars. He lands in Invader's lane. And I now understand that Invader has actually protested that race. I can't believe he's not going to take this loss like a man. Jim Davidson is with the U.S. Hot Rod Association officials right now.
Mike, what's going on right now?
We're going to review this run between Invader and Monster Patrol. There was been a question that maybe Monster Patrol got over Invader's lane, and that's what we're looking at right now.
Hey, Ray, as we're watching this, will you tell us what's going on here?
Yeah, well, he came over the cones a little bit. Now that's their call, on whether or not, right there he's crossing the cones. So that's their call. That's what the cones are there for.
Guys, any word on what we think now?
After reviewing the tape, we're going to leave it stand as Monster Patrol winning. We're going to leave it stand as the way it was called.
Yeah, crazy turn of events here, because you see what looks like a triumphant victory for Monster Patrol and what appears to be a big driving miscue by Ray Perkowski, spinning into the corner, into the wet infield, and we quickly find out that, like you said, Perkowski protests the race, And we go to the replay. Joe kind of analyzes this a little bit. He says he looks like he gets into Invader's lane as they approach the cars, and then he lands in Invader's lane. So we go then to the production truck, I guess you'd call it. I don't know if they're in a shack on the track somewhere or if they're out in a production facility, you know, kind of adjacent to the track or in the infield. I don't know where they had this thing set up, but they had the TV camera or the timing tape, whatever they're using to review a race, with Mike Speller and Rich Schaefer sitting there. They're looking at this video as they roll the segmented replay over top of this then, and Ray is explaining, you know, he's crossing the cones. That's what they're there for. He's not in his lane. And Mike Speller, with some BDE, I will say, just basically says right to Ray's face, after reviewing the tape, we're going to let it stand as Monster Patrol winning. That's the way it was called.
Joe agrees with the call. I agree with the call as well. I purposely did not mention anything to do with cones throughout this entire bracket until we got here. Matt, if you look back at all of these races, and I can't point out how many times I saw rear tires clipping cones, rear tires knocking cones over, guys pushing wide coming out of that last turn and slipping just a right front tire into another guy's lane here. It did not matter, and to me it seems unprotestable as far as I'm concerned here for Ray Perkowski. I understand the need to, though, from him to at least go up there and try. I mean, why not go up and try, right? I mean, you're a guy that hasn't really ever made too many final rounds in your career. Here's a chance to get one. And you might see a way to get it because technically the guy was a little over in your lane, but I don't see the need for doing it. I see it, but I don't see it. I'll put it that way. I see it, but I don't see it. I understand why he did it because he might get something, he might get a lucky call. But
and I could see maybe where with the bounce after the jump to where Ray could maybe insinuate that, hey, I had to take evasive maneuver to avoid him, and that got him offline into the corner and messed up his whole line into the corner. But I think the call's fine as is. We've seen trucks going on either sides of the cones all night. Digger cut in a little bit on the race prior, coming out of that corner from the outside. So they're obviously going to let that kind of stuff go. And Monster Patrol, the benefactor of that whole situation, Paul Schaefer, going into the finals against the Gravedigger. 2 black and green trucks heading into the finals.
Black and green, ladies and gentlemen. This is the battle of the black and green. One on the other side is the Wrecking Machine. The other one's going to try to take him to jail. Monster Patrol and Gravedigger, a really good final round, honestly, for this particular time period. Dennis Anderson, obviously the grizzled veteran at this time, now taking on Monster Patrol. And this is part of the reason why maybe we chose this race to kind of end out Gravedigger month here, because when we talk about we talk about St. Paul 88, Anderson's the rookie on the scene, right?
He's definitely an upstart at that point.
Well, maybe not a rookie, but he's an upstart at that point here. Paul Schaefer's an upstart as well here in 1993, and he's looking to make a name for himself off a guy that just a few years ago was looking to make a name for himself here. And we've got, like we said, Monster Patrol, Gravedigger. We see the road to the finals here. We see who the trucks have beat. And apparently previously, as they were going through here on commercial, Paul was on the live microphone saying he's going to kick Gravedigger's butt. And Marianne, his wife, is going to echo that statement.
Yeah, Jim's with her down in the pits right up against the fence there in turn number 4 of the oval track, which would be the second, coming out of the first turn on the monster truck track. And she says he's gonna.
She's very excited too, by the way.
Very excited. And they're doing the live interview there, and then they kind of put the picture-in-picture as the race starts with Marianne and I'm sure some of the other friends that are there with them, kind of watching this race track side. It's cool that we get to see the live side-by-side of the race and those folks down in the pits watching it and their reaction.
My favorite part of this whole thing, though, is when she says, "Oh, no." Monster Patrol is going to grab the whole shot, surprisingly, here on Gravedigger, and we see Marianne cheering on Paul. Dennis is going to cut that corner exit, though, extremely tight. Like he's almost pushing Paul to make a mistake right here on the exit. And the camera angle that we get really doesn't tell quite the whole story. We'll get another camera angle here in a little bit that I'll talk about, and that'll kind of show the whole story. But here, it almost looks like Dennis purposely cut in on him. Paul's going to come out of that second turn right there. This is the point where Marianne says, "Oh, no." Paul's going to lose a ton of momentum right here on the exit. And it almost, from that first camera angle that we saw, it almost looks like Dennis cut his momentum off completely on the exit. However, Dennis is going to come around this final turn. He's going to end up taking the win here over Paul Schaefer. The replays roll. We talk about how Paul's rookie mistake is what really cost him the win here. And then we do get to see the camera angle that I like, and it's a head-on shot of the exit of the corner. And when you look at it, you see Monster Patrol's already pushing out off of the exit of that turn. He was clearly going to end up in Dennis's way, and Dennis actually has to move a little bit to avoid Paul. So I'm glad there was no calls made here official-wise, and the call stands as Dennis Anderson winning here in Louisville in 1993.
He's tried since 1989 to get a win in Louisville. This may be Dennis Anderson's shot. Gravedigger. How did he get here? Well, he made it to the finals by taking out some very, very tough trucks today. In round number 1, he defeated Invader. Then First Blood, and in the semis, Carolina Crusher. Monster Patrol, he's in the finals. He had some tough competition. Taurus, Predator, Invader. And his Monster Patrol pumped. During the commercial break, he vowed to the crowd that he was going to kick Gravedigger's butt. Jim Davidson is standing by with his wife, Mary Ann. Let's see how she feels.
Mary Ann, your husband Paul in the Monster Patrol, he's getting out there in the race to go up against Dennis Anderson, the Gravedigger. How do you feel?
I am real nervous, but he's going to kick his butt.
He just said that himself, too. Did you prep him on that?
No. He's gonna.
It's a family trait, kicking butt.
He's going to have to do something to take out Gravedigger. Monster Patrol, the rookie, goes against the big boy Digger. They wait for the green light in Louisville, Kentucky. This is our final. On the line, Marianne's watching her man as he goes against Gravedigger. Her face tells the story. The inexperience of Paul Schaefer shows. He tries to cut that turn just too close, has to back out of it. And Dennis Anderson, the experienced driver, picks up the win. He takes advantage of that one split-second mistake. Digger gets his first ever win in Louisville, Kentucky. A 7-second lead over Monster Patrol. Gravedigger's in the winner's circle.
Monster Patrol, you tried and you died. Welcome to the big leagues, rookie. I'm very happy to show you the ropes, as long as it's around your neck.
You've got issues on both sides, actually, and I didn't.
Yeah, you do. I agree. There are issues on both sides.
In my notes, the reason Dennis, looked like he kind of cut off Paul a little bit is because Dennis got super loose coming through the second half of that corner and was really trying to chase the truck back down the track. And you could see the truck was really laid over on its side. The truck was in a four-wheel slide. Yeah, and it so happened that the truck slid down into Monster Patrol's lane. So the two were kind of coming together at that point. Dennis, when you see the shot from the live race, his outside rear tires are the ones that run over the cones. I mean, he was almost fully in Monster Patrol's lane, but we've stated that they're not going to call that penalty. So they let the finals play out as it is. And Dennis, 5 years.
Dennis wasn't the first guy, by the way, to do that as far as the lane goes over there. So, like I said, no call. Good thing they didn't make that call. But when you look at the head-on shot of that, you can see Dennis is also, as he's in that slide, he's still straight coming onto the cars, whereas Schaefer's truck is pushing wide.
Right. And Joe then says he's tried for 5 long years, and tonight the win is his. Now, he has been trying for 5 years. He was successful once before. But this is his win tonight in Louisville. And, what else can you say? Jim Davidson comes down with the winner's interview, as he does at these live events where they actually had Jim on site for. And Dennis says Paul had good equipment, but not the experience that he did. And Jim says, you went out there and kicked some asphalt.
Yeah, I love that he says that, by the way. On a kid's show, by the way. Anderson said last year the asphalt was the one kicking him, and this year he's the one that kicked it. I like the way that Dennis ends the interview right here. Jim presents Dennis with the Monster Wars champ as the Monster Wars champion, at least on this night. And then we cut to Luann, who's going to do the conclusion of the show. We're going to see the updated points now as Gravedigger has taken the points lead, followed by Barefoot and Equalizer.
Equalizer losing out on the points due to not being in this race. So Equalizer down to third. Then you got Taurus, Predator, Invader, Carolina Crusher, Kodiak, Monster Patrol, Tropical Thunder, First Blood. We're showing the top 11 now in the point spots throughout this event. And Luann wraps the show up by saying, we'll see you next week from the Silverdome. And they kind of end the show there. And that Silverdome show would be the Monster Wars Invitational, the Red Man Pulling Invitational in real life that they had the non-points event at that they recorded. And you and Cheech did the episode on here prior on the Retro Monster Truck Review.
Yep, we certainly did. We have done that episode. It's available here in our archives on the Retro Monster Truck Review. Honestly, I like that episode that me and Cheech did. We had a fun conversation on that episode about that particular show. That's the only time, by the way, you see Bigfoot on the Monster Wars tour the entire season is when you see this. And of course, they talk about Bigfoot a lot over there. But here, as we wrap up this Louisville show, obviously there are a lot of it seems like the story of the Gravedigger month has been stories that we've seen here progress throughout these episodes that we've covered. And here we've had quite a few of them. We've got, obviously, the story of the rookie, Paul Schaefer. We've got the story of Dennis Anderson supposedly trying to win his first event here in Louisville, even though Dennis himself specifically doesn't mention the fact that he hasn't won, or he has won here before. He does say he's been chasing to try and master this place since '89. So, hey, it adds to the story. It helps build the story right here. You got the 50-50 crowd chant between between the Gravedigger and Carolina Crusher. You've got the great race that we had with Carolina Crusher and Barefoot earlier on as well. They did a fantastic job of telling these stories, which, again, leads me to believe that they didn't need these stupid characters that popped in later on throughout most of this show. And that's part of the reason it brings my grade down a little bit for this show. I rated it about a 7.5 for this episode, mainly because the characters they draw it down so much. Everything else is good. Even a little bit of Joe Lowe's over-the-top broadcasting at times in this episode, it's still good. But those characters, especially the one I'm talking about, when they start talking about not sharing parts with each other, and I don't need your parts. First Blood and Gravedigger matchup, I hated it, and that brought my grade down probably a full point just because of that race.
I'm going to say that, as we've mentioned here before, and Monster Wars being one of my favorite shows from a production standpoint, the one that we watched and analyzed here and we're commenting on for the show was the full 1 hour original syndication run show.
Yes.
Now, some markets in syndication got a half-hour show with no characters. So,
lucky them.
If you look at it from that aspect, now that you didn't get probably the feature interview with the wives or Paul Schaefer either, but you got to take the good with the bad. But if you look at the event itself and the TV production, there's nothing better than Monster Wars. Even though the points were perhaps somewhat fabricated and a lot of the show took a lot of creative license with the stories and stuff, it's still the graphics, the music, the aura of the show for me is just one of the best out there because they put so much money into producing this show, probably more money than has ever been spent in monster truck racing on a TV production. So that side of it, I love. The hour show we're watching again, you've got the characters. I give the show more of a pass than most because, again, I've done a lot of research on this show, the series, who it was intended for, the strategy of the marketing behind it was to have that be part of the show, and I get that. But I'm going to still give this probably an 8 out of 10 as the total package based on some of the deductions you've mentioned and some of the factual inaccuracies that they've done here. But any show where we've got Dennis Anderson, the Gravedigger, in a redemption type situation, coming back to take a win, it's good television.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Like I said, though, I'm still not a fan of these Monster Wars episodes. I mean, mainly because of the characters. That's what takes me out of them. If I watch an episode with no characters in it, I can get sucked in and enjoy this just as much as anybody. To me, I'm still always going to prefer tough tracks. That's just my personal preference, just like your personal preference is Monster Wars. I can respect that quite a bit.
You're a tough tracks Monster Smash Finals hater, though.
I hate the Monster Smash Finals music, but I absolutely love the rest of the broadcast.
Hater.
Whatever you say. Hey, guys, I really hope you all have enjoyed this month of Gravedigger that we have done here on the Retro Monster Truck Review. We're ending it out here with the Louisville Figure 8. Obviously, one of my favorite places to ever watch a monster truck race on television anyway. Well, honestly, we kind of wanted to tell the story here of some early Gravedigger races and what helped build the legend that has become this 40-year-long tradition, basically, on the Monster Jam circuit. We hope everybody involved with the Gravedigger 40th anniversary has a great season. We hope the Gravedigger truck and teams have a great seasons as well. And hey, we will catch you guys again very soon here on the tracks across America.
Now that Gravedigger month's done, we can finally get around to Monster Trucks 2000.
Oh, God, I can't wait. Hey everybody, thank you for joining us here on Gravedigger Month. Just want to pipe in here real quick at the end of the episode that I'm going to take a step back from this for a few weeks here, concentrate on my job as a Monster Jam tech official, and over the next few weeks you're going to see some shows hosted by Matt that I'll be putting out here every chance I get here on the Retro Monster Truck Review. He's got some good guests, he's got some great ideas to put forward here, and I really hope you guys enjoy these few episodes that he's going to get to do. Until then though, I will see you guys on the tracks across America, and I hope you all have a great rest of your first quarter here in the monster truck world.
Wasn't the rear drive on that truck, but still just putting it down. Repeat after me, Seattle. Digger! The Grave Digger, you ready for that? Both trucks are set with a thumbs up. It's showtime! He gets into it. It's just bad. Wild. Awesome.
He's cool. He's tough.
He's nuts.
Because we like him. He's got a swamp in it.
Anything for the crowd to scream. Houston! Grave Diggers in the house! Taurus and Grave Digger! Grave Digger and Taurus, even Digger pulls it out! Oh yeah! He races on to the next round. The Grave Digger out doing what he likes to do.
Like some high-flying, high-speed, full-throttle car crushing.
Grave Digger with a successful 5.5-pin turn. Get it here, ladies and gentlemen. Dennis Anderson and the winner, Grave Digger.
The fans are the ones that drive me. You know, when you hear them cheering for you, and I just set this driving style way back when I first started, and it's a reputation I built, and I got to live up to it.